Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next act is a self-described genre buffet exploring all kinds of sounds and ideas in each of their songs. With an overarching tone of self-acceptance, there's something within their music anyone could get on board with. Welcome, Isla June.
Hi. Oh, genre buffet. I got to use that more.
I pulled it right off of your Spotify, so it's in
I
there. It's in
know.
there.
I know. I forgot. That's a good little nugget right there. And
Yeah.
yeah, very very true. This has been my problem problem. This has been like my thing in music since I started playing music. I don't really know like what genre to be, and I don't know if you need to know. Right? I don't know.
Not in the modern world of music for sure. Um I always like to start with where your music journey kind of all kicked off.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, I would say it kicked off in like a real way when I was in high school. I was a scene kid and, you know, just had a really, really wonderful music scene locally. I grew up in Westlake Village, about 40 minutes outside of LA. So I grew up with a lot of music around me. But I was really into like emo bands and hardcore music and would go to a lot of shows. And I've been writing since I was 13 when I started playing guitar, but I joined my first band, or I started my first band when I was like 16, and it was basically like a Paramore ripoff band. Like all I wanted to be was Haley Williams, and I think probably many people my age felt that way when they were getting into music. Um, and yeah, I started my first band called Waltz Reprise, even though I later learned that it's pronounced reprise. So we just like had a name that we said wrong for the entire career of our of our band, but it was an amazing band. I mean, we would play awesome shows with like 200 people show up. Like our whole community was like Westlake, Newbury Park, Moore Park, Agora Hills, that whole area of like Ventura County was just incredibly creative. Lots of bands, lots of local artists. So we would all like book these shows at churches and just play every weekend. It's like what you did in my town growing up. So it was hard not to be involved in music in some way or another. And I loved being in a band. It was my favorite thing in the world. And like, it was my little family. So that's how I really got started, being like a front person in a band and being a singer. I always like, wrote little acoustic songs before that and knew that I wanted to be involved in music. But yeah, joining a band and playing shows and like playing shows out in LA too, since we're so close. We did that for a couple years. And then I got really into like jazz and like bossa nova and Sade and wanted to like explore other genres of music. So then I started a band with my then boyfriend at the time called Red and Purple, and it was like we described it as like bossa folk, like indie bossa folk. It was like Feist meets some kind of jazzy thing, and it was so fun, and I loved it. And then I went to college, so then I got the fuck out of there and desperately wanted to like leave my hometown, even though it was awesome. Um, yeah, and then I went to college and I studied music in school, so it's kind of been part of the journey the entire time, even though I've never like quite taken it as seriously as I'm taking it now.
um I don't even know how to picture in my head what indie bossa folk would sound like,
Yeah, you don't
but
have to. It's okay.
um how did that kind of all of those different pieces of that puzzle culminate into the project that you're running now? Like where did that kind of all transform into the current artist project at hand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, college was really interesting for me. I had never been like that surrounded by, I mean, I was always surrounded by musicians growing up, like, but they were my friends. I knew them that, we all grew up together and played music together. And when I went to school and was just surrounded by like insane talent. Um, I struggled to figure out like where I fit in all of that and like what my sound should be. And I actually kind of, even though I was studying music and like production and audio engineering and kind of a little bit of everything, um, I left school not really knowing what to do in music, and I stopped playing for the most part. I used to like go do open mics and stuff when I was in college. But then I moved back to LA and I started working in advertising. And after like a couple years of not really picking up my guitar and not really writing, I realized I just missed it so much. And I started Isla June in like 2015. So I'd moved back home in like 2012. So it had been a couple years. And the journey of Isla June has been a journey. I didn't really know like what I wanted it to sound like. I just wanted to start writing again and playing shows again. Um, so I think like even growing up with all these different genres of music that I was so interested in playing, I tried to like incorporate a little bit of everything into my writing at that point at the beginning of Isla June and just try and like explore sound and figure out what my sound was.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up leaning more towards this like dark indie rock, a little bit of like Mazzy Star, a little bit of Cranberries. Um Found a band, then found another band to play with, and started playing a bunch of shows around LA, and we had a blast. But I would say like it was really during the pandemic that I feel like I found the sound of Isla June that really speaks to me and makes me feel good, and that I can write by myself, like in my, in my little studio. Um, and it shifted a little bit, kind of like went full circle back to the more like Paramore vibe, a little bit more of the alt rock, grunge rock, little pop in there too. So I feel like I've ended up in a very like natural place after exploring everything that I really like to do. Um, and yeah, I'm in a place now where I actually like feel a bit more confident about the genre of music I'm in and the sound and like what I want it to feel like energetically. And I think that's actually more important than genre. Is the energy and like the vibe of it and the feeling you get from it more so than like putting it neatly into a box or a bucket
Mm-hmm.
that people can like quickly understand. I'd rather people seek my music out for the feeling it gives them, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And I think that like that in terms of like the whole genre conversation, which
Yeah.
in the like the little artist space of things is a huge conversation because we've gotten to the point in the world that it's not you're buying whole albums. It's,
Yep.
you can find random songs. And so I think that's part of why, because since it's been so much more accessible, we can then really create truly whatever it is that we want to create. But since music is one of those things that's like unmatched in the way of it's going to give you whatever you take from it is it's something that's like you can't compare it to anything else, even in the other arts of the world. It's like music is just its own thing. With that, it's like you don't necessarily need to be pigeonholed into any particular genre or even any big picture genre. Like even pop is very widespread anymore. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to have that certain thing, because if you're showing up to create whatever it is you're creating, however that sort of transforms itself, it should bring the like same energy, I guess, because it's being created by the same person. Like, it's, yeah, if you make a sad song, it's going to have that vibe to it. And if you make something that's like super like upbeat and happy, that might be a different thing. But the like backbone of it all is still going to be rooted in who's creating it, who's doing it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, it's kind of like everybody's just their own genre in a way anymore.
Totally agree. Yeah.
But
Yep.
that doesn't
I think people are embracing that too. I'm seeing like a lot of newer artists or up and coming artists really describe their sound in a very singular way. And it doesn't even necessarily have to do with like genres of music. Like
Mhm.
I was on Threads today. I recently joined Threads,
Oh no.
and I actually really do like it so far. But I'm seeing bands describe themselves as someone posted today, this band Honey Crush, who's awesome. She posted about this band that describes themselves as Fairy Doom, which and I think the band was Faytooth, which is a band on my brother Justin Moranga's label called Dune Altar, and they describe themselves as Fairy Doom, which is like, I don't know what that is, but I do know what that is. You know what I mean? Like, it's so specific, it's so niche, but it, and maybe other people have like describe themselves as that as well, but I think the act of finding sort of what your little brand is in music is actually just more fun than being like, I'm a pop artist or I'm a rock
Mm-hmm.
artist. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out what those words are. I mostly use like grunge pop, which I don't know if that's a genre. Maybe it is, but I feel like it just kind of describes the feeling of my music these days, and I really like that. There's also this band Cheek Face. They're a local LA band, and they're doing so well. And I love the way they describe themselves. They call themselves America's favorite local band, which is like, I don't know what that's supposed to sound like, but I know what feeling I'm gonna get if I go to that show. Like, America's local band, like that's really cool. It
Mm-hmm.
feels really accessible, but also like intimate at the same time. I love artists like embracing that now instead of trying to, yeah, exactly like you said, like try and pigeonhole themselves. It's so boring. It's so boring to try and be one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the reason I got into writing for film and TV as well. So I have like outlets for all kinds of types of music I want to explore and feelings in music I want to explore.
Yeah, I think because the other part of it is like with how saturated everything is in any way you look at it, from the creative side, from the consumer side, from the social side, all of it. Um, being able to have even something that you can say that's like your category of one
Yeah.
is a huge separation factor. Like if you're scrolling and you're like, I see some, like they just identify themselves as a pop artist, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I can scroll 10 more videos and I'll see at least another two of them, you know.
Yeah.
But if you have this just like classification that you at least can claim, whether it
Yeah.
makes total sense on what it is or not, it's different than just saying you're a pop artist. That makes a
Yeah.
difference. It's just, it's like, because then people will
People will
kind of be like,
fill in the gap.
yeah, people will be like,
Yeah.
I don't
They'll
know what
fill
that
it in
is,
and
but
they'll fill
like
it in if
I'll remember that, you
totally.
know.
Yep, they'll remember it. And also, if you go too broad and you try and just be a pop artist, it's like everyone has their own interpretation when they hear the word
Mm-hmm.
pop. There's a
True.
million different artists they're going to think of, so it doesn't say much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a nice, I guess, when you need it for other reasons, industry reasons, sure, but if you're really trying to like understand who you are as an artist, it's a fun exercise to try and almost like avoid, be genre agnostic and just think about, how do I describe the feeling of my music? And it's hard. It's so hard to do it, especially like when you're so close to your own music. You're like, what is the
Mm-hmm.
feeling of my, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I've been looking at the playlists that people make of my music and seeing like what they call their playlists. That's been so fun and hilarious. I'm like, oh, there are, I'm actually like seeing the occasions in which people put on my songs. Like, how cool is that? And they're all over the place, absolutely all over the place. But it's like, it's such a fun way to expose yourself to other people's perception of your music. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not, there's no opinions involved. It's literally just like how they're naturally categorizing you, and how they're
Mm-hmm.
naturally, where you're falling in their library of music, and how, who they want to pair you with. Like, it's such a cool way to think about your style, uh and who your music is for, and like what it's for. So that's been really fun lately. I've been like doing deep dives into all the different playlists that people have made.
um, where did the name come from? Where does the name for the whole project come from? Because you've been running with it for a while. So what is the backstory there?
I know. I had an identity crisis last year. I was like, should I change the name? Um, Everyone asked me this, and I wish I had like a fun story, but I was born in the month of June, Gemini, June 14th. And I had one of the first songs that I wrote when I started writing music again, when I came back from that couple year break, was a song called June. And it was about like getting back to myself, getting back to, um, trying to find out who I am again in music. And like the month of June, I don't know what it is. It just felt like a interesting way to like think about who I am in this phase of my life now. And the feeling of June and the feeling of that month is, I don't know, there's something like sunny and warm and inviting about it. And I was just driving along the 101 at some point one day and was like, what sounds good with the word June? And Isla just popped into my mind, and it sounded like an island of June. I'm like, take me there, man. Like, I want to go to the island of June where it's June all year round. And it just felt good. It rolled off the tongue nicely, and it felt warm and inviting. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to be. I want people to feel like they can access my music. And yeah, it just sounds like a nice place to be, don't you think?
I've never really thought that much about the month of June, but
That's fair.
um,
What month were you born in?
April.
Okay, so I'm sure there's like things that you think of and associate with that month, not just like your birth month, but like the feeling of that month being a particular having meaning and significance in your life in some way. Um, I don't know. Maybe I associated it too close to like who I was at that time. And it is pretty soft and pretty, which is not me anymore. Certainly not anymore. Which is why I was like, should I change this name? But you know what? I'm sticking to it. I feel like I'm starting to actually get it out there now. So why if it ain't broke,
Yeah, do not
you
abort
know.
mission if you're gaining any sort of like trajectory or momentum or anything. That'd be like starting from ground zero almost from a
Welcome
brand
to my
perspective.
perpetual identity crisis. Like this is but you know what? The beauty of writing music is you can always start new projects
Mhm.
and they can represent different parts of you. And that's what I've been leaning into more than anything. Like I have projects people don't realize I'm part of, I think, that just express like completely different sides of my personality and the type of music that I want to put out into the world and the type of music that I want to like make a living off of as well. Sometimes very different than like approaching things as an artist and really the songwriter side of me.
Yeah, it's nice to have those alternative methods, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of like, because then it's not, you can keep that project nice and tidy in terms of like kind of what it's supposed to be and still
Yeah,
have somewhere to put the stuff that's just kind of miscellaneous or a
totally.
separate thing.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
has
yeah.
its own separate desktop folder at
Yep,
that point. You can just throw
absolutely.
whatever you want in there. um what do you find most often inspires your writing?
Hmm. I mean, it's a big question because I I do a lot of writing not for Isla June. I do a lot of writing for pitching for film and TV and advertising, which I love. I love to do. And when it comes to that, it's really about thinking of what's a universal entry point for this style that I'm going for? What's a lyrical theme that people can connect with and relate to? That's not necessarily having to express something from like the deep depths of my soul, which is maybe more how I'd approach my artist writing. Um, but it's almost trying to like find connection with people in an authentic way and at the end of the day I just want to write cool songs regardless. But I'm inspired by other artists, other writers. I'm inspired by like visual things. I'm inspired by like TV shows and characters and storylines. I'm yeah, I guess when it comes to like my own Isla June music, which the lines are kind of blurring together at this point too for writing for TV and then writing for Isla June. Like I feel like I'm sort of finding the center of the Venn diagram there. Um, but when I sit down to write an Isla June song, it really is just what I wake up feeling that day. I usually start with like a little voice memo or I have a whole list of um, like words and phrases in my notes that I keep. And it's usually something that just like pops into my mind, or I hear something in conversation. I'm like, oh, I love the way that they said that. I love that idea. I love that little nugget. Oh, that word, like hearing that word in a song would be so cool. And I go from there and I just try and build the world around it after that. And releasing music is really where like the world comes to life, I think, with Isla June, and really creating like each song I feel like ends up having its own little world that you can enter, and then the next one might be a different world, even though um it might come from a completely different place. But yeah, I would say I'm deeply inspired by music too, and I mean really first and foremost by music. So I think we all are in one way or another.
So when you approach just a general new idea, are you intentionally approaching it going artist project or the other way? And have you ever had it where it's like
Yeah.
something you started
Mm.
off writing for this doesn't
Yeah.
really necessarily work for that anymore and just becomes the other?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that's where developing like new projects is really fun, actually, because, like you said, like there's the miscellaneous folder, but sometimes you see a theme and you realize like, wait, hold on, this isn't as like random as I thought. It's actually just expressing like a different vibe and a different feeling, and I'm tapping into that more often than I realize. So like, what can I turn that into? I want to make that a thing. I want to put that out into the world, even if it's not like my main project. Like Isla June is always going to take precedent, I think, just because it's mine. I really own it, and um, now that I'm like producing and recording and trying to do as much as I can on my own, it's a little bit more precious perhaps than other projects that I start that are really like rooted in fun and just trying to practice my craft and like just be a good writer. And I think when it comes to like Isla June music specifically, again, I think I realized during the pandemic when I was sitting here in my studio, not able to really collaborate with people in person anymore, what came out was pretty natural and authentic, and also limited to my very beginner mindset with production and with instrumentation. And I realized that was actually a huge advantage and a huge benefit because it allowed me to just get back to what I love to do, which is just write fun songs um, that have energy and have a little angst to them, and make people feel that energy, like, and that confidence.
Mhm.
And I went through a lot in the last year, just identity wise. And I think my most recent EP, like a lot of those songs, whether I realized it or not, whether I wrote them specifically thinking they be for one thing or another, like it was very clear by the end of writing those songs, like where they would belong and where they fit. And they all sort of followed a similar thing. So, but then there's another side of my writing where I literally just get briefs and it's like a homework assignment and I have to write a song. And sometimes I write it and I'm like, oh my God, this would be a sick Isla June song. Like, cool, I'm gonna release that. And other times it's very different and it's a dope song, but like doesn't necessarily feel like it would fit under the Isla June umbrella.
That is definitely a place of personal restraint because I feel like if I wrote something that was like just whatever standard of it I thought was good, I would want to
Yeah.
release it anyways. But that takes like definitely some willpower to hold that back and be like, okay, she's good,
Mm-hmm.
but she's not Isla June
Mm-hmm.
material. I couldn't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
good for you.
You could if like I totally hear that. And there are moments where I'm like, ooh, it's so good. Like, I just, I want to release it. And there was a period of time where I was kind of just doing that, just like,
Mhm.
whatever. Like, I'm the through line. Who gives a shit? Like, I don't care. But then things started to change when I was working on my EP. And I realized, like, no, actually, I think Isla June does have um, a vibe and does have a feeling that I want to see how much I can really dig into and see how deep we can go with it. And if I write a cool song, I mean, I'm writing music every day. Like, yeah, some of my favorite songs that I've ever written are not Isla June songs, and I kind of love that. I kind of love that. It takes the pressure off a bit too. Um because when you want something to be a release, I mean, I'm sure you know, like, man, that's a whole other process and a whole other um exploration into what does that mean when you put a song out into the world? What does it look like? Are you going to play it live? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? So it's getting easier to find that distinction in the music that I write and really know very quickly like what an Isla June, if it's going to be an Isla June song or not.
Mhm. I like what you said about the how the EP just kind of created, not necessarily created a vibe, but like kind of like defined a vibe that was
Yeah,
probably already there.
yeah,
Because I think that is like a true testament to what like a like defined artistry and defined like brand should be in music. It's like a lot of times like when you're starting out, you want it to look a certain given way, and then maybe certain things don't fit that, and then it's a whole
yeah,
whatever. And it's just like it's one of those things that you kind of have to just let develop and let happen at its own pace. Because if you
yep,
try and make it any particular kind of way, you're gonna be A, pigeonholing yourself, or B, limiting yourself, or maybe and B, limiting yourself from all these other things that you could have created if you weren't so zeroed in on this one idea. And so just kind of letting that be whatever it needs to be for that moment in time. And if it figures itself out,
exactly.
it figures itself out. And then you can run with that idea. It's like you don't create the parameters, you sort of move the pieces and just
Hmm.
sort of put it all together and are like, okay, the picture's there now. Like we have
Yeah,
enough that's we're working with that the picture is there. And so now we can just create more pictures like that.
yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, it's a natural of evolution, I think, vibe wise from where I was pre-pandemic and the sound of my music then. And that was like no less me, but I didn't have the same clarity around it. I was writing songs that I really loved that were perhaps a bit more like emotional and emotive and really fun to play live. I mean, so fun to play live with a band and like with horns and felt really epic. Um, but it, this EP, Out of This World, just became an evolution of that sound into a direction that I was just listening to a lot during that time, and feeling like deeply inspired by like a lot of 90s alt rock bands, a lot of like female fronted 90s grungy bands like Hole and Garbage, and I was like in a deep like Smashing Pumpkins phase. Like it was just the music I was listening to, and I was like, wait a second, like this actually feels so close to the kind of music I made when I started making music. Like there's something here, and I wanted to go home and write songs that made me feel the way those songs made me feel. And I think I did that, and like I'm so proud of this EP. I've never really set out to make a body of music. I've always been kind of a singles boy. Like, let's get them out, let you know, whatever. Like each song is its thing, but I realized the music I made in that year and change, felt cohesive for the first time in my life. I was like, "Oh, damn, like this actually I think I did what I didn't mean to do it, but I think I did, and I think I should release these together as one compilation of music. Like, let's see what that feels like." And that's the first time I've ever done that in my entire career of writing music for myself. Like, I released one EP back in high school. Like that was it. So this was really like a big moment for me to sort of wrap it all up in its own little package and tie a bow
Yeah.
around it and put it out into the world.
Yeah, it's nice when things just sort of cultivate in that way. It's not I'm setting out to create
Yeah.
this however long body of work. It's well shit, these kind of all have the same vibe. Let's just kind of put them all together, ship them off
Yeah.
and call it a day.
Yeah, it made sense. It told a story to me. Like it was really retrospectively, I realized like, oh wow, these songs are are communicating ideas that I was wrestling with in the last couple years, and exploring, um, and having to sort of unlearn like who I always thought I was, and really try and figure out who I am now. And um, yeah, I kind of didn't even realize it was happening as it was happening. And now that I look back, I'm like, oh my God, of course. Like one way or another, like the truth's coming out. And if I set out to do that or not, like it's gonna find its way into my music. And with this EP, it did. It really did. Um, and I'm just, yeah, I didn't set out to make it. In fact, I pushed against it for a while. I pushed against the idea of releasing a body of music because of the climate of music we're in right now. It's not really conducive to that, and it's a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy, and sometimes absolutely nothing happens. And I know people, I have dear friends, the most talented musicians I know have, put so much time and energy and financial, whatever they got like into these incredible albums. And it's so hard to get them in front of people. It's so hard to get it into others' ear holes that aren't already listening to it. So that fear was really strong. I was like, am I going to do all this and like no one's going to hear it? And then I realized like whatever. Who gives a shit? Like I want to put this out there. I
Mm-hmm.
really want to. I want to do it. Like why am I trying to convince myself not to when it feels right? It feels like it's there.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things and thoughts to wrestle with around those sorts of ideas. And especially like you said, like this is not body of work music industry anymore. This is
No.
this is this
Sad.
is like perfect for your singles and all of that,
Yeah.
just riding that wave. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely just releasing in general is something to wrestle with, and let alone multiple things all at once to just
Yep.
kind of package up and call it good. But back to the genre conversation.
Yeah.
If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would you call it?
A new genre. I guess like yeah, I don't know how new it is, but I've been coining it as, I don't know if I'm originally coining this genre as grunge pop. Like there's something dirty about it, there's something raw about it. There's but it still feels like accessible in the way that I interpret pop music. All pop means to me is accessible. Like all it means is there's a little something in there for everyone. There's a little something in there that you'll probably enjoy, that you'll probably like latch onto. And that may be different for every person that's listening to my music. That's why going through all those playlists is so fun, because it's like, oh, what are you connecting with in my music? Um, and I think the word grunge for me is less about a sound and more about a feeling. And like there, I think like specifically with this body of work that I have worked on in the last couple years, um like grunge is kind of punk rock. It's kind of like free and open and rough around the edges, and it's not perfect. And for my first like self-produced release, like I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. I knew it wasn't going to be the smartest music you've ever heard. I knew it wasn't going to be the most incredible guitar tones you've ever heard, but like that DIY sort of punk attitude is like grungy to me. And that's,
Mhm.
I love the dirt. Like that's what I love about that. Those artists that I was really inspired by at the time. Like it was just perfectly imperfect and a little, yeah, a little rough around the edges. And I think that's such a fun place to be when you, and and it really helps just like mentally not feeling like everything you do has to be incredibly polished. And that's not what I was looking for. That wasn't the end game for me with these songs. It was really about like, I just want to do it. I just want to try. I know that I'm not the best at recording myself. I know that like that the vocal chain I'm using might be peaking or might be a little too hot, but like that's what makes it my sound. Like those little imperfections define you in an interesting way. And I think unless you're a just total fucking snob, um, you might enjoy that. Like you'll find something about it that you like, and that's I guess like the pop element for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think like pop, as we all know, pop comes from the whole like what's popular. But it's like
Yeah,
if you ever think about it, it's like, well, if that kind of music wasn't what was popular, what would we call it? You know what I
yeah,
mean? But
exactly.
that's a whole like mind fuck in itself. But I like
Yeah,
the way that you kind of turned it into like it's what's accessible, it's what there's something there for everyone because that's kind of the whole like that's saying the same thing but in a nicer light. It's less of
yeah,
like, oh, it's popular, but it's like it's for everybody. It can be for
yeah,
everybody. There's something
yeah,
within all of this
yeah.
that's for everybody. And yeah, I think like looking at it less of in terms of the musical qualities of it that would
Mm-hmm.
define any given genre. Like,
Yeah,
there are certain like you could drop any genre and it'd be like kind of what you're looking for. Thinking about it less in the way of what sonically we're looking for, like, and thinking about it
yep,
more in terms of the attitude or the feeling around that idea and having that sort of perspective on it kind of allows you to reclaim those sorts of titles as far as genre goes in a new and empowering way because you don't have to fit into that sonic box. You
yeah,
don't have to fit into
yeah.
that sonic category. It's more of here's just the vibe. You can
Mm-hmm.
do with that what you will, but it's the vibe that's there that makes it fall within that category.
Yeah, and I think like if you were to play my music for 10 different people and ask what genre it was, they would say 10 different things. Like it really isn't about what other people think it is. Like everyone is going to interpret music the way they interpret music. Like just because I call it grunge pop doesn't mean someone would ever use those words
Right.
to describe my music. Like truly. But what I really love about sort of making whatever my own term is for these songs is it's not like a like I'm not it's not a quiz that like there's a right answer to. There is no right answer to this. Like
Mm-hmm.
it really is just what am I connecting with? What feeling do I want to evoke? Yeah, sonically, whatever. Like re- everyone has their own sort of referential artists and bands for different genres and sounds, but like for me, this is what it is. And you can't argue with me about it. There's no, you can't.
Right.
That's what it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem if you go, that's not what it is for me. Like, it's really this for me. Like, sure. I am also a strong believer that like your music doesn't have to be for everyone. Not everyone has to like it, but I do think that like the feeling of my music has a place in in your life. Whether or not you like the sound of it is a completely different conversation. But the feeling of it, that
That's
need for
fair.
like confidence, that need for um like I'm just feeling a little angsty and aggro and like oh I just want to hear some distorted fucking vocals like that feeling because you're feeling a certain way like we all, that's just the human experience. We're all feeling those feelings at one point or another. And I don't put on the same artist when I'm feeling different feelings. I go to different artists for different things, to match the mood I'm in. And I'm not someone who's like, you're going to put me on all the time and listen to my music every day. And nah, like, put me on when it feels right, when it feels good, when it's meeting you where you're at. That's all I want. I don't need to be the most popular. I don't need to be the most listened to. I just want to be part of what's going on with you. That's it. Just a small part. Like, really. And I'm going to be here a while. So maybe that'll evolve over time, whatever feeling I'm, whatever part I'm going to be, whatever moment I'm going to meet you at. But right now that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, that feeling of acceptance, like I want people to feel that way when they're listening to my music, or when they want to feel that way, I want them to come to me. And there's so many other artists they can go to, but like maybe they'll come to me.
Maybe I can be on the list.
Maybe I can be on the list. I can be so far down the list. Like put me on the end of the playlist. Like it's all good. But yeah, it is interesting to think about your own music and artistry in that way. Like I don't need to be for everyone all the time. Like that's a standard I'll never reach, and that I never really want to strive for. That ain't why I'm doing this. Not at all.
I mean, I think that is the right way to look at it, even in a conversation of really there is no right and wrong.
Yeah.
Because you can't be everything for everyone, and
No,
you
that's
can't
literally a
even
lyric
just
in one of my songs.
you can't be for everyone anyway in itself, and you can't
Yeah.
be for everything in itself as well. And that's kind of
Yeah.
that's why there is room for people to do this. It's not just we'd only have this capacity for the big names out there. It's because
Yeah.
there's all these little like corners of things that there is space to be filled by these different creatives and these different types of artists. It's like they will fill different roles. It's like you
Yeah.
can't listen to, I mean, you can, but like you metaphorically wouldn't listen to the same thing all of the time. That would probably
No.
get a little old. So maybe if this is like 80% of your time, maybe
Yeah.
maybe we can fall into the 20%, that remaining other section of
Yeah.
things. Maybe it's like
Yeah.
just for the occasional time where it's just you feel that specific certain kind of way. The whole point of it is just to fill the role. It's like that's how you really will actually make the impact. If you're striving to be for everyone and for everything, you will end up being for no one, because you can
Mhm.
only really you're one person. Like I don't care how big your God complex is, you can't fill that whole void. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be self-aware enough to be willing to find your place in the
Yeah.
conversation and
Yeah.
do that to your fullest. It's like we can't
Mhm.
all be these huge powerhouses, and nor should we want to be. I am totally fine if 10 people put me on once a week. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
that's all it is, that's fine. That's 10 people I never would have had if I was aiming for something else. You know what I mean?
100%. 100% know what you mean. And I think there's a pressure, sort of an unspoken pressure, that you need to be so much to people, so much to so many people. Um, it becomes a conscious choice to decide, not, no, no, thank you. Like, wow, what a lot of, that's a ton of pressure. I don't know how you even begin to get to that point. I don't really see myself as an artist who's ever going to be in the top 1%. God, I mean, I can't. That's just so silly to me to even think that. And like, but that feels like you're not supposed to say as an artist. Like you're supposed to say like, no, like I can get there. Like, yeah, like I'm hot shit and my music is really different and unique. And um I don't I don't necessarily, that's not my goal, like being different and unique. I just want to make music. And I mean, I have you can always see it in like the comments, right, of like your videos, like how people feel. And people are quick to tell me like, oh, I've had a couple comments in the last few days or last few weeks that have been like, this sounds like other things I've heard before. And I'm like, okay, you've
We're
tried
not
coming up with an
reinventing the
original
wheel here.
idea. I was like, yeah, yeah, it totally does because it's inspired by music that I love and that I listen to. Like, and I want to make music like that. So if it reminds you of something, to me, job well done. I
Compliment.
did
Yeah,
it.
that's a
Like,
compliment.
yes, and they're saying it negatively, but I'm like, is there such thing as original art anymore? Like it's very few and far between if it is. And
Hmm.
my goal is not to be the most original. My goal is literally to just make music that I like and that I find fun and that communicates something to people. And I think if those are the boxes I'm trying to check, then I'm checking those boxes. That's success to me. Like that's it. That's all I really need. That's all I'm asking for out of my music. And it would be nice if it was exposed to more people, sure, but like it's hard to do that. And I don't know the secret code to getting your music in front of everyone or tons of people. So if you find me, you find me. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, like it's all good. Like move on. I have so many artists I can share with you that you might like more. Like that's cool. All good. So yeah, I'm not precious about things like that.
Hmm.
I've always been a musician. I'm always gonna be a musician. Full stop,
Yeah.
however far it takes me,
It's
whatever. It's all
that's all
good.
there is. That's all there is to it. We don't have to sit here and reinvent the wheel. Like we can just create new versions of
No,
what's already there. It just doesn't have it does
no, I
it's not
mean,
that deep. It's not.
it's not that deep. Thank you. It's not that deep. No, like the depth should come from your writing. The depth should come from like the emotions you're trying to communicate. Like, but the depth doesn't need to be, I am doing something brand new and you've never heard this before. I don't, that's, if that was the benchmark that I was trying to hit, I mean, this would be a really grueling process and career for me. I just want to have fun and make a living in music. That's all I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with however far it goes. And like if you hear the bands that are really popular today anyway, like it's not real, it's not like wholly original. Like you can hear influences in people's music and
Hmm.
people get asked all the time who their influences are, and everyone's got an answer. Everyone is influenced by so many different artists, and like that's what's so beautiful about art. Like I mean, it's admiration for the things that you love and the art that you
Right.
love. That's beautiful. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. We're not in a world of starting from scratch, and that's all there is to
God, I mean, how hard? That's
Imagine.
so hard. I know. Like, it's not going to happen. And if that's people's expectation, then you're interacting with art in a very limiting way. If
Hmm.
that's what you're looking, if that's the only thing you're looking for, that sucks, man. That I feel bad. Like there's so much beautiful art out there that you can connect with on so many different levels. And sure, maybe one of them is like, I just want to hear something I've never heard before. Um, but that is so hard to find today. I don't think it's impossible, but it's
It's
hard to
hard.
find, and you have to be deliberate, I think, with that. Or maybe it comes naturally, and that's just some people have something very unique to say. Sure, yeah, why not? Okay, that totally. I'm sure that exists. I know that exists. If I thought hard about it, I could be like, yeah, no, that's brand new. I've never heard that before. Um, but for the most part, I fall in love with artists because they sound like something that I love already.
Yeah. Yeah. Like yeah, and it's you don't necessarily know what came first, you know?
No,
And
yeah,
so, like if you what are you just gonna like one thing out of all the different categories, then you're really on a tight little section of the whole
I know.
conglomeration of it
That's a
all.
tiny slice of the pie. It's so small.
Can
So
eat that in
yeah,
one
I
bite.
I know. And really I come back to it a lot, but it's really about the feeling more than anything else. Like that's all when you listen to music, when you make music, that's the I don't know, that is more important, I think, than like originality. Every song is original in the sense that it hasn't been made before. Like it's not a duplicate. Um, but it doesn't need to be Yeah, it doesn't need to be starting from scratch. I think that's a wild concept to me.
Is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist?
Oh boy. Um hmm. It's hard for me to say one song. I'll go back to just this EP. I think Out of This World, the song and the EP is captures where I'm at right now. And it might be so irrelevant to me in a couple years. But at least I can look back on it and say, like, oh, this is like a little time capsule of who I am in this moment. And like where I've gotten to in this moment. It really is like a nice like period at the end of this part of my life that took a lot of work to get to and a lot of confronting um, my own narratives about myself and asking if those are still true. And then writing songs kind of without realizing it that ask those questions or that uh, help me like direct me where to go and who I want to be. Like um, my song "Dangerous."
Try to simmer down, but I don't really wanna let it all out, cause I'm a prima donna. Kinda feel like screaming, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna. What can I say? I love the drama. 'Cause I wanna live life that's a little dangerous, dangerous.
I thought that was a song just about like being dangerous, but like no, that song is about like taking like personal risk and like not feeling the need to conform and not feeling like if I'm different that's bad and weird, and if I identify as one thing or another that's okay, and like that little bit of danger in your life is like I don't know. That's what I want. I want to be okay with that risk. I want to take that and say, like, what if I'm something else? What if I do something else? What if I try something different? And I didn't realize that that's the song I was writing when I wrote that song. But when I look back on it now, like, yeah, that meaning is there. It's in there. Um, I would say, like, a front to back listen of that EP kind of, it might tell you nothing about me or it might tell you everything about me. I'm not really sure. Like for me it's clear, but they're also just like fun songs. So if all you get from it is I want to do it, like listen to a song that makes me want to go jump out of an airplane, which is what I did with Dangerous. That's cool. I'm down with that too. Like if you just want it to be your adrenaline junkie song, like that's awesome. But for me it was a little bit more personal and sort of, wrapped up in a song that I think can mean something else to somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about like the playlist diving that you've been doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's what the song is for you can be exactly what it is for someone else, but it can also be like the complete
Yeah.
opposite, and you can look at it in a completely different way. Depends on how it's packaged, depends on how it's
Yeah.
written, depends on what ultimately it's saying. It's why we have those like sites that are like, if you type in like a song and an artist, like meaning will come up under like the
Mm-hmm.
Google search and everything. It's like, and then there's all these people that are submitting what they think the song is ultimately about.
And they're
And
all right. They're
yeah,
all right.
in their own way,
Yeah.
they all
Yeah.
can be attributed to what that song's like story is.
Yep.
Only the person writing it really knows nitty gritty exactly that. And, some people think, you know, to just let it be whatever it is for anybody else. And that's because that's what gets us to connect with it. If you know exactly
Mm-hmm.
down to the core what it is, and that's not your experience, it might
Yeah.
lose that sort of connection for you. And it might not be that same impactful song that it once was. So being
Mm-hmm.
that it's something completely different for someone else is almost more interesting in a way than it's just like somebody understood exactly what I was saying. It's like, no, like I said something that was meaningful enough to take a completely different form in someone else's life.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And like, I mean, it happened to me too. That's what I'm saying. Like when I was writing it, it meant maybe one thing. When I look back on it now and listen to them now, it means something else. Like the meaning has evolved for me. Or I've discovered the meaning of it truly for me. Or I can just suddenly hear it, like the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh yeah, that's what that right, that makes sense. Like that's what I was dealing with in that moment. I wasn't setting out to write about this, but this is what came out, and it comes from a real place. And you can usually sort of reverse engineer and find that like where it came from. And it's really fun to actually do that with your music like after the fact. I try not to overthink it in the moment, because I think constantly trying to edit yourself into meaning is a little like, what's the word for it? It's a little besides the point for me. Like I want to just try and write what comes out. And sure, I'm really good at editing after the fact and like, that's not really saying what I wanted to say, or that lyric was like a placeholder and I want to actually say something specific there. But I'm not I'm not typically setting out to write Isla June songs to like mean something specific to everyone. Social media really wants you to talk about your music in that way. But I try and put different hats on my songs when I promote them too. Like sometimes one week I hear one of my songs and I'm like, oh, like this is what it means to me this week. And then the next week I'm like, oh, but also like it kind of means this to me as well. And if it means that to me, maybe it means that to somebody else. And that's the that's sort of the like necessary evil of promoting your music. You have to kind of distill it down into simple ideas. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. Maybe it's not evil, but it requires you to analyze and scrutinize your own music to a point where you can be like, okay, it means this. Here you go. Is this relevant to you? Um, I guess that's just kind of how it is now, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because it is like it's always like, oh, like POV whatever, or like
Yeah,
this happened so I wrote this song and all of those different things, and
yeah,
which can be beneficial in terms of getting to the point and basically telling you what you're signing up for by watching this 30-second clip on your phone right now. But
totally.
it also then does kind of take away the freedom of creating your own definition of what it is, and that
Yeah.
freedom of like the self discovery within it,
Mm-hmm.
um in that way. But I guess if you're
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't probably hurt you too much if your songs aren't that open-ended and are kind of pretty straight to the point, but I don't think there's a lot of that
100%.
anymore, so it's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of writer friends who are incredibly intentional writers, and they're so fucking good at it. Like, um, so good. They want to write about something specific, and they do. And actually, like that is part of the practice of writing to briefs, and writing about writing for specific scenes in movies and shows. Like, yeah, you are trying to sort of zero in on the meaning and write to it, but even then, someone will still listen to it and think it's about something else and hear something else. So, um, but like, I think storytelling writing, that's not really my style of writing. And the folks who do it are chef's kiss, so good at it. It's just not really how I write and how I think about music. I'm actually like not always trying to tell a story. Um, at least like a sequential story, you know what I mean? But some of my favorite artists, that's what they do, and that's why I love it. Like, take me along with you. Like, hold my hand through this story. Like, walk me through it. I want to hear what happened. Um, I would love to maybe learn how to write like that, but I don't think it comes as naturally to me.
Yeah, and it's in the same sort of capacity of like not every style is going to work for you, and not
Right.
every sort of direction is going to be for you. It's like it's the same way that no song, no artist, no album is for everyone. There are some that a majority of people could find something in, but it's just like it's not for everyone. It wouldn't be creative if it was universal.
Mm. Mm. Oh, that's an interesting little nugget to think about.
As soon as I said it, I was like,
Because
wait,
like a
does that
lot of
even
the
make
time you
sense?
feel like no, it does. It's interesting because it's like if universality is your goal every time, like I'm kind of with you. Like, but I think within that there are like themes that can be universal. But if your goal is, I think it comes back to what we were talking about before, to just make something that like is everyone under the sun and sky will love. Like, yeah, I don't know what that song sounds like. I guess like Imagine by John Lennon. Like I don't know. Like give me that song. Those songs exist, but are they being written today? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure it's what I want to listen to.
Mm.
I love artists with a point of view. I love artists with something to talk about. I love artists who write music that speaks to a part of you that like you didn't realize was there at the time, but then you get hit with that feeling where you're like, why am I welling up right now? Like, why is this hit? What is this triggering inside of me right now? That's the best. That's the best feeling when you listen to music, is when it hits you in just that spot where you're like, oh boy, this is making me feel something.
No, and that's yeah, like we've established, it comes back to the feeling, not anything
Mm-hmm.
really in particular beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And sometimes the feeling's just fun. Let me just say that. Like
yeah,
sometimes it's just fun. It's just to have fun, and it doesn't need to be anything deeper than that. And I think like we're sort of taught as writers and artists that like that's, well, maybe some of us are. I think I was kind of in the camp of like artists and writer who thought that like just writing a fun song is illegal and never, you can't do it. You're not supposed to. Don't do that. It has to have deep, deep meaning. I yeah, I don't subscribe to that anymore. Sometimes I just want a song to feel really fun to people and just make them put a smile on their face and make them feel good and dance around. And I think that's just as valuable and viable of a song as a song that hits you in the guts and makes you
mhm.
want to cry. Yeah.
We need music for all occasions.
Yeah. I think we're swinging back to that 100%.
Hmm.
That's why music is amazing.
Yeah.
It really is.
If you had to pick two or three
Mhm.
artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who would it be?
Ooh. Okay, I'm not going to go necessarily sonically because I feel like that defeats the purpose of our conversation. But vibe wise and feeling wise, I love Remy Wolf. Like, if we're going with a current artist, the feeling of her music, there's nostalgia in it, there's just unabashed fun in it. There's so much feeling in it. But when I listen to that music, I feel good. I feel confident and good, and like I can kind of go out. It's inspiring. It makes me want to go write music. Um so that's got to be influential. I mean, just that idea of like hearing an artist and then wanting to go like, now I want to go sit down and write something. And then there's something about there's something about Hole that I was never a Hole fan growing up, but I got really into like 90s rock, 90s alt rock um, during the pandemic, and same feeling. I want to go write music. And this time it was like I want to go write music like that. Like that is a fucking cool ass vibe, and that is a cool feeling, and there is something so raw about it and so degaff about it. So maybe like those two together are like where I sort of see things kind of morph, or I try to be kind of in the center, not try, but like I find myself in the center of that little Venn diagram. And then the just the overall energy, power, and the freedom to evolve that Hayley Williams from Paramore has allowed herself is, I don't know how any artist and writer isn't inspired by that. Like, I mean, that band has withstood the test of time, and every record sounds different, but it also hits you in a way where you're like, oh, wow, they nailed it again. Like, this is a Paramore record. I love this. This is making me feel the things that I go to Paramore for. But sonically, they explore and they evolve. And like, I love allowing yourself to do that. So just her entire, like, the energy she puts out into the world, I find really inspiring and super influential, always, forever. I mean, got me into music, found my way back to her as an adult writing music. So yeah, citing them as an influence now after however many years is pretty incredible, that like it's still that meaningful to me. And I'm not someone who's always putting on a Paramore record. It's not like that. It really is like, it's the music, but it's the feeling. I keep coming back to it. It's the feeling that she puts out into the world. That self-acceptance is so valuable to people, and it was to me growing up and still is to me. So man, if I could get to that point and hit that, that's like, what an accomplishment. That's amazing.
I think those all make sense. I think
Cool.
even just like if I had heard nothing and just based it off of our conversation,
Yeah.
vibes track.
Vibes are tracking. Good.
It all aligns. It all makes sense.
Great. Ask me again in like 6 months and the answer might be totally different, but that's okay. That's where I'm at right now. Right now, that they're doing it for me.
No, and I think oftentimes it is because, especially with how we're consuming music now, we oftentimes, it's going to be, at least like, even if it's only two people, they're going to be from very different sorts of corners, and it's going to be somewhere in this like gray area that we fall. And I think you could almost in a way paint it the picture where it's like Paramore also falls in the middle of those two, in terms of like the range that the first two kind of gave us. And somewhere in that space is Isla June as well. It's in there somewhere.
If I can be in that word cloud, then that's awesome.
It's just a matter of where
definitely
that point falls,
Yeah, and I think it changes from song to song too. Like, also like Weezer's been really inspiring to me as well lately. I just, again, like there's a certain energy and unapologetic, like, I don't care if this is perfect. Here's a catchy song you can sing along to, and you're going to listen to it for years and years and years and years. Like, I mean, the longevity of these artists, I think Remy's going to have an incredibly long career too. Like, I mean, she's the Gen Z like cult leader. So I think she's going to be to a lot of people what Hayley was to me growing up as a 16-year-old artist.
Interesting. I could see it. She's cool. I like a lot of her stuff.
Yeah. I mean, she's cool. Even like if we're talking like originality scale and like as far as like who she is and the shows she puts on and her just her whole, the way she presents herself, she's not trying to be anything. I can hear her musical influences with every song. I can kind of hear like, oh, I know what she's like in these days. Like, that's really cool. I actually like that. But as far as presenting a like a new idea in music, as a singer of a project that is performing for people and putting yourself out there. I think she's doing something cool and different and interesting. And I think it inspires a lot of people. I think it like really stands for something to people right now. So yeah, I got mad respect for her.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things going on with her stuff, and she is definitely like on the more original side of it all
Yeah,
in what currently everything looks like.
I agree. And it's effortless too. Like, come on, what's better? What's cooler than that? Like,
Yeah.
effortlessly cool? God, one can
Where,
only dream.
where can I buy that?
What do they call it? Like sexy indifference? Like, that is like, yep, that's it. But you know what? I think it marks a turning point in music and in art where the coolest thing is just being yourself and not having to strive to sound or look like a certain thing, like a certain expectation. Um, and I just love that. Like, more of that, please. Yes, absolutely.
That brings us to the new thing I added, and that's
Oh,
a question from last week written
okay.
for this week's artist. And last week's question, or last week's artist asked for this week's artist, what's the most beautiful thing that you've ever written about?
Oh, wait. Okay. So an artist last week
Last week's
like
interview
posed this
posed this
question to
question for
ask
whoever came next.
whoever. Oh, that's fun. That's a fun little thing. Do you do that every week?
I've
Is that something I have to look forward to very shortly of developing a question?
Yeah, once I hit 60, I was like, okay, we're implementing this. So it's been a few episodes of it, but it's
Oh, that's so
relatively a new
cool.
concept.
What's the most beautiful thing I've ever written about?
Oh, what
Oh
a
my
loaded
God.
question.
I'm like, how do I interpret that? Right? Like maybe they asked it thinking something, but like the way I interpret that, I guess. Um what I want to answer is just writing from a place of vulnerability is a very beautiful thing. Um and I know that sounds kind of like a, I don't know, not a very like unique answer to this question, but whenever I can write a song that comes from that's trying to say something that I am afraid to really share, um talking to someone, or afraid to share about, like exposing yourself in a way, in that way, is the most beautiful thing I think you can do as an artist and a writer. Like, not just for other people but just for yourself, like giving that to yourself is really beautiful. And I think we can get caught up a lot in writing music for other people, but when you can really like write a song, and by the way, I don't think writing music for other people is like a bad thing. I know Rick Rubin wants everyone to think that like you can only write for yourself ever always, but I don't think that's true. But when you do have those moments where you're really trying to expose something about yourself in a vulnerable way, like that's a beautiful gift that you're giving yourself. And once it's out there, like it's no longer like just up here. And this is where things get really really tough and challenging. But once you get it out, it's different. It feels different, and it feels like a release. Yeah, that's beautiful to me.
I'm 100% on board with
Yeah.
that. That's the best, in my personal opinion. That's like the best stuff, that it's just like just comes out of like this little corner of your head that you never thought it would come out of, and just
Yeah.
needed to. And it just
Yeah,
was exactly
exactly.
what it needed to be.
Yep. 100%. I mean, that's like that's when it really like hits you and means something. And those songs absolutely have a place in your listening experience, 100%, and your writing experience. I think it's important. But yeah, it's hard to do that. It is hard to like to let that out sometimes. It's scary.
And then your question
Oh
for
God.
next week's artist.
My question. Okay, I got one.
Okay.
If you weren't writing music, what would you want to do? I know it's like not music related, but like,
That's
yeah,
fine. That's fine.
if you weren't writing songs and weren't a musician, tell me something else. What else?
What's the
What else like
alternative
intrigues
route?
you? What else intrigues you and inspires you? Like, what's the thing that you would be doing right now? It's hard to picture that, but yeah, I think that might be. You might get some fun answers.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
You know, I'm going to answer that one really honestly and say not much. I think that more like I hate the phrase now more than ever. It's my least favorite thing, but I do think that right now in music, um, independent artists are doing something special. I think there's an authenticity. That buzzword is frustratingly overused, but I really do feel it and I see it, and the amount of hard work and effort and energy that I see coming from independent artists, not only do I like am I inspired by it, but I am also pushing for it really hard. I want to look back on my career and say I tried it all. I no stone has been left unturned, and I don't think that that is monumentally different than what other independent artists are doing right now. I think that's why we feel such a kinship towards one another, why there's a blossoming like community of independent artists who support each other and want to uplift each other. It doesn't feel competitive to me in the same way that it used to. It feels more like we're all in this together. And so I don't actually think there's a ton that like sets me apart in a very in a unique or interesting way. I want us to all just hold each other to that. Like there is room for everyone, and I believe that, and I think I'm just part of the everyone, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, I think there is a lot that um it is a very communal time. It is a very everybody's like it is a united front. We're not
Yeah.
it's not as much as it is like we're competing for like attention in the way of like you can't be consuming all of the music all at once. It
Mm-hmm.
isn't necessarily treated in that way amongst the those that are competing. And
Yeah.
that's like the best part of it all is because it's like when it you can be essentially pinned against each other. It's like no, it's like just all kind of doing the vibe and along for the ride
Yeah.
and having and enjoying whatever that route looks like and just kind of making our mark however big or small that is.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree, and like I'm surrounded by independent artists. Like these are my buds. And the way that we show up for each other is really really cool, and like they're the hardest working people I know. And I mean, some of them are teachers, and some of them have full-time jobs, and some of them have put it all in music and quit everything and just are going full bore into it. And like regardless of where you're coming at it as an indie artist, I've never seen people work so hard to try to make this a thing. um not to make it a thing in like a I want to be famous, right? Whatever. But like they have something to say, they want to say it, they have something to create, they want to make it. Whether they have a ton of money to do it or none at all, they're still finding ways to do it. Like I mean, it really is amazing to witness that and like get to show up for your friends in that way and support that. I think that's why supporting indie artists is just crucial, like, because there's more of us than there are of them. Like, there's more indie artists out here doing it and doing it really, really, really well. And like, I'm so inspired by indie artists. Really, truly. I mean, like, who is doing everything other than indie? I mean, I'm sure there are like other industries where, yeah, business owners, entrepreneurs, sure, but like indie artists are like using, like, it's their art. I mean, there's something different there, um, and they all have something to say. So I couldn't possibly like set myself apart from that uh, in any meaningful way, and I wouldn't want to. Like, I don't know if that's like the question you were asking me, but I like being part of the indie artist community, and I'm rooting for everybody, which just feels good, feels better than trying to compete with everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if with the way that you're sort of painting the picture, which is like not necessarily even making it seem more positive and everything that it is, it's just looking at like that positive community part of it. Why would you want to set yourself apart if that's the picture? Well, I put
Yeah.
me in the picture. I don't need to be outside of that.
Yeah. I want to work as hard as my indie artist friends are working. I want to put in as much effort. I want to care as deeply, like, and at the end of the day, my little group chat of indie artists, like, we're there for each other in the low moments. We help each other. We share connections with each other. We help each other network. We teach each other things. Like, I love that. It's one of the best things I've ever encountered as an indie artist, is just other indie artists who like fucking get it. They get it. They know the grind. They understand what we're doing. And they're not afraid to, there's no gatekeeping. I mean, I'm sure there are, but like in my little corner of the indie artist world, like, we really do have each other's backs. It's pretty cool. I didn't always feel that way, but I do right now, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for it. I don't think I could. I don't know if I would be able to do this in the same way if I wasn't like also watching them do it.
It is definitely an inspiring thing, whether it's intentional or not, to be surrounded by those who would be your peers doing the same thing, and like, that energy. Because it's like, if you're like looking at it and you're like, that person's doing exactly what I want to be doing, let me
Yeah.
just go and do that same thing. um it makes it feel tangible in the way of like, you're no different than I am, and like, if you can make it happen, I can also make it
Yeah.
happen. And if at times you feel like you can't make it happen, the
Yeah.
tables turn.
Yeah.
It's a
And
really, yeah.
sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to.
you're good.
I'm a bad interrupter. Um, there was a time not too long ago where I didn't feel like I had that. And I know there's a lot of writers and artists and musicians and producers out there who don't have that. And I encourage them to find, seek out your peers and people that you can connect with over what you're doing, and find your community. It's not going to knock on your door. Like, go out and find it. And it might take time, and you all might do very different things, but like, there is a mutual experience happening, and connect over that and help each other out. Um, go find it. Like, I didn't realize how valuable it was until I had it. And now I can't imagine not. Music can be very lonely and isolating. And I think naturally it is. You're in your bedroom writing songs, right? That's how it starts. Um, but find people you can connect with over this experience, because sharing it is really cool and really fun.
Yeah, I mean, if it, if we're supposed to consume music in this way that like it connects us to other people, because it does more than probably anything else, why shouldn't it be that same way on the front end of things and the sort of creative end of things, whether it's a collaborative effort in the music itself or not, or if it's just that energy of the support of that group or whatever? Like, why would it be any different on one end than the other?
Yeah. And you know what? We don't have a lot of advocates like there's not a lot of people or groups or organizations that are really advocating for indie artists, or sharing information, sharing resources, sharing networks. I see them developing more and more, usually by indie artists who are like, there is a gap in this community, in this entire industry, that needs to be filled. And that gap is for the mass amounts of indie artists who are really doing this themselves, like truly alone in this. And I think like the more we find those people, and like hello TikTok, like go find them. You don't need to be in the same city, you don't need to be in the same country, like you can find your community anywhere. But having just a couple people even that you can bounce ideas off of, send your new songs to, send your demos to. I was part of a songwriting share group at one point. Start something. If you know, if you can't find it, then try starting it. And you will very quickly develop a community of people that you love, and like you guys can like mutually depend on each other and share with each other. And that's so like, I love sharing new music with my friends. And I love being like, what do you think about this? And usually the response is like, I love this. Can I add some vocals, or like, can I do the, oh, this is so cool. Oh, I hear this. Like, don't be afraid of their feedback. Don't be afraid of their ideas. Embrace all of that, because it will make you better.
What impact do you ultimately want to have with your music and with your artistry?
I want to answer this. I want to think about it. What impact do I want to have? I think there's like personal impact that I want to have. Like, I really want to just enjoy doing this. I want to make a living doing it. I want to be able to do it for a really long time. And then in other people's lives, I want to meet them where they are. It doesn't need to be all the time. It doesn't need to be the most important thing in their life. But I just want to connect with people, even if I don't know who they are. Like, music is the great connector. I mean, really, like, I think I'm not really asking for much out of my music. I don't need it to change the world. I don't need it to solve big problems. I just want it to be there when people need it. I think that's the impact I want to have.
I don't think I want to say anything back to that, because it was very just well articulated and wrapped up. I feel like if I add anything else, we're just going to go on a tangent that takes away the value of what you just said.
Awesome. Let's call it.
So in that case, then we reached the final question, which is ultimately, why music?
Why music? Because I've tried to do a lot of other things, and it just pulls me back in every fucking time. Like, I don't think I have a choice at this point. I have tried to do other things, and when it's right, it's right. So I'm not going to deny myself that. I've tried, and it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, if it keeps finding its way back,
yeah,
probably a reason.
yeah. It's part of who I am. Like, it's the only thing I've ever done for a long time. I don't think I've ever really done anything else consistently in my life. Truly. ADHD, I try everything and I love it for like a couple months, and then music's the only thing I've ever really stuck with, and haven't had to force myself to do that. I've had to force myself to not do it. So that's pretty cool. I don't know.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. For like a good like 4 year stint, I would have like at least one like there'd be one creative project I'd start and work on for like 3 weeks and then drop it, and it would never be heard of or spoken of again. And
Yep.
music is the only one that was lasted more than a month.
I know. Like, whoa, good on us. Like, look at the longevity we've
I
had. I
know.
mean, truly, it's hard to find something like that. It's hard to find something that you just want to do forever. Um, and it's been a long time, so I can't imagine that really ever changing, even if it becomes just a hobby one day. That's fine too. It's never going to go away. And that's okay. I've accepted that me and music are like this forever.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like frustrating. I do say this a lot. Like sometimes having a passion is like, oh my God, like having a passion for something is, there must be so much freedom in not having like a one thing that you do, and you can kind of just go do whatever you want. But like sometimes there's a lot really loving one thing can feel daunting, and it feels like you got to do something with it, right? Like you have to. So yeah, my relationship with music has not always been like a positive thing in my life, but I've never had to force myself to do it. I've never had to talk myself into it. It's always been part of my life in one way or another, whether it's at the forefront or in the background. As a writer, whether I take a break and find my way back, like that's okay. But yeah, I always seem to find my way back. So yeah.
I think that brings us to the end
Cool.
of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.